Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining me. I am at an undisclosed location today. I know it's not normal. I've been bouncing around a lot. I want to appreciate you guys for jumping in. I know there is a lot of court cases going on with the Adelsons and everything else, so I'm just glad that you guys came to join me. Uh, Going to stay on topic pretty much. I want to talk about what just transpired last night with the Suffolk County Police Commissioner, Rodney Harrison, resigning, putting in his papers, as we would call it. It was kind of a shock for some, but anybody who's watched this channel knows that it wasn't really a big shock. If you saw the interview I did with the commissioner last week, he intimated that he was strongly looking into the angles with the family, and we also discussed about the new executive that's coming in. For those of you that don't know, Long Island is holding an election come Tuesday regards to the next county executive for Suffolk County. And what often happens is that the next executive comes in and will choose the next police commissioner. Now, sometimes they will keep the person that's in charge, and sometimes they don't. They want to bring in their own people, and they want to just be able to put their own touch on things, so to speak. So that's the kind of politics that is kind of normal. And then we have some other stuff that we're probably not going to get too much into the weeds today. But the issue that comes down to is politics always plays a big role in this. In a little while, Raul from Catch LISK will also join me. We're going to discuss it with him in regards to exactly what he does. He's also followed this case like myself from the very beginning. I just want to shout out to some of my new members: Lisa, Mandy, G. Valdez, Missy Mayhem, Christine, Miss Wildside, Deja Vu, Art with Viv, Caroline, Fuzzy Puff, Janet, Jay, of course. I just wanted to thank you guys, and we just got a new member in also. I wanted to thank her too. Hang on one second. Hope Bear, thank you very much for the support in this channel, and you guys really helped me grow. And just it really makes me kind of excited to do this kind of stuff when we get some good feedback from you guys. We are live on Kick. We are live on here. I have a new setup. I'm investing in some new technology. I'm going to be getting a microphone and all those other things too, and the headsets and everything. So just bear with me in my growing pains. But let's get back to the commissioner. Now, like I said before, if you saw, for those of you that just entered the room, because we just saw a big jump, I did a interview with the commissioner last week, and he intimated that he was willing to move on to his family life, or maybe even move on to another job if the job offer comes out. Listen, he's got an awesome resume. He was the chief of department for the New York City Police Department. He was the chief of detectives for New York City Police Department. I thought that New York City really made a bad decision when they let him go. And Suffolk County made a great decision on bringing him on board. If you look at what previously has happened in Suffolk County over the last couple of years, maybe even decade, two police commissioners before him, Geraldine Hart and Tim Sini, really didn't push this case forward. Rodney came into this case and he said that he was going to change things. He was going to change the culture. He was going to change the way the case was handled, and he was going to solve this case. He said that on day one, and he did. Is the case finished? No, and this is a big concern of mine and many others. I've been reading your comments about that little short I put out last night. When I heard about the news, I just wanted to get something out there, not for the sake of just putting something out there, but it's just something to gather everybody's opinions and thoughts. And Deja Vu, thank you very much. Just gifted a membership. I appreciate that so much. I'm all new to this stuff too, so I'm just trying to get through all the different motions. But it's just something that really becomes a serious issue. Now, in policing, I'm just going to give you a little background on certain things. The police commissioner doesn't really affect a lot of things in regards to the day-to-day operations, police work in regards, like someone calls 911, the police are going to come, of course, and really the police commissioner has really no effect on that kind of thing. But when you have a major investigation going on like this, which kind of has, for a lack of a better adjective, floundered for a good part of a decade or more, you really needed somebody at the helm to put this all together. And we had gotten that with Commissioner Harrison. He put together this task force. He brought in the state police. He brought in the FBI, the sheriff's department, the NYPD, all the different working parts, and he made it work. And in regards to law enforcement, believe me, that's a very tough job to do, to get everybody to kind of play in the sandbox, nice, so to speak, and be able to pull off what he did. Now, I haven't spoken to the commissioner personally since the news has come out, and I'm going to hold off on making any phone calls and that kind of thing, because the man does need a space. He's going to have a lot of stuff that he needs to fix out. So we're also not going to get into a whole bunch of speculation that I've seen on the internet and everything like that. That's just not my gig. I don't like doing that kind of stuff. But we will today talk and examine about some potential issues and problems that I can see going forward with the case. So the commissioner had put together this task force, and you would kind of ask yourself a lot of questions like, why wasn't this done earlier, right? I mean, that's usually the first thing that you're going to do. Every major investigation generally has a task force like this. This is, I've been looking through the annals of crime history of New York, and besides cases like the Son of Sam and Joel Rifkin, this has got to be in the top, 5 cases in New York State crime history. Now you say, why is it number 1? Well, yeah, I got Amityville Horror, like I said, Joel Rifkin and Son of Sam. You got a lot of different cases like that would be up in it, but it's definitely in the top 5 as far as I'm concerned. And the issue that you need to deal with is that in regards to unsolved cases, it's probably the number 1 case. So if you want to categorize it as the largest unsolved case in New York State history, then yeah, I'm with you. Largest case ever in New York State, I don't, like I said, there are other potential cases that we can argue with about that all day, and I really don't want to get into that. So yeah, Sherry Wilson just said, perhaps even the country, yeah, for unsolved cases. And we know that this case could have implications into other states, such as Nevada for Las Vegas, South Carolina, even Springfield, Missouri is on the list. Oh boy, Viv, thank you very much. That was generous of you. I appreciate that. You guys are going to make me blush here. I'm glad I wore a red shirt today. I appreciate that. So, wow. Hello from Germany. Hello. How are you? So, yeah, we're dealing with a lot of unknown at this moment, but we're hopefully going to try to make sense of this. If you've been following the Long Island serial killer case, you've probably got bits and pieces of it over the years, right? Unless you lived here and had to deal with this just about on a daily basis, between the corruption and between all the different aspects of what was happening between James Burke and then with Thomas Spoda and then with the FBI. I mean, it was a nonstop saga. And the saga continued for a better part of a decade, and it carried over into the last 2 administrations. This was the first administration where things changed dramatically. And if you recall, if you got a chance to see the episode I did with the commissioner, he told us plain language. If you're not going to be helping out, you're not going to just get out of the way. And that was pretty much his exact quote. And I think he took that with him in that charge when he did this. Probably got some pushback from a lot of different folks in a lot of different areas. And listen, I understand that we said that, he said that, we put our egos on the side and we marched straight in and we did this. And at the time they did, but did those egos then, take over from all these different things? I don't know. But the issue that comes down to is he presented the problem that we had with the Long Island serial killer case. And then he went and said he was going to solve it. And he pretty much followed through on many of his, things that he said he was going to do. Now, I understand that this case is far from finished. Right now, we have 3 bodies tied to one suspect, Rex Heuermann, and a possible of the 4th. And I think that 4th is going to be announced now rather quickly in light of the news that has just transpired. So it's going to be interesting to see if my guess is correct on that. But what we're going to see next is hopefully not a crumbling of this investigation. I'm very concerned about that. I had mentioned this just a little bit earlier that, the police commissioner really doesn't have a lot except for this task force. This task force needs good leadership. Now, who the next person is going to be, I don't know. I think for the next, I believe that the commissioner said he's going to stay on through December, which is a good thing. Hopefully that he will be able to stay on long enough so that the new person, whoever he or she may be, comes in and he can just hand off the reins and explain to this individual everything that he has accomplished and where he thinks is going. When you're looking at any type of investigation like this, you have to look at it into three different things. That is what was done, what is being done, and what needs to be done. And that's how a criminal investigation works. You always think of those three questions when you're doing something like this. And this is just for anybody. So if you guys are following other cases, like even the Adelson stuff that's going on now from Florida and the like, just think of it in those three things: what was done, what's being done, and what needs to be done. And right now we are in the middle of what was being done and what needs to be done. And that's where I worry about where a ball so can get dropped, for a lack of a better pun. And it's just something that you you just understand, something that you have to really work on. I have to. So let's see here. Sorry about that. Raul is trying to get into the room. I just need to fix it for 1 second. Just bear with me. I'm just gonna open it up here. Sorry about that, folks. Of course, that's not going to work, right? Anyway, so as I'm working on trying to get Raul into the room, we will continue going what I was talking about here. So this becomes the issue. What ball is going to get dropped, and how bad is it going to be? And I want to understand that everything happens for a reason. Sometimes that reason is politics. And that's where I really need to be, or we really need to be concerned, that politics, at the end of the day, takes over. And that's something that we definitely don't want to see. I know there was a lot of speculation today, and I want to try to tamp that down a bit in regards to what we're actually seeing here. Excuse me 1 second. I'm just trying to get Raul in the room. One of the different issues that we're going to see now is that, of course, everybody is saying, well, the district attorney, put out that statement after the John Ray press conference, and the fact that, the John Ray conference with the police commissioner there was out of the normal. And, we're dealing with a department, if you recall, that is, and most police departments really are not willing to change. And the progressiveness of the commissioner might have upset a couple of people within the Suffolk County government, let's just put it that way, including the district attorney. I don't know. But when you read his statement, the district attorney's statement, and okay, great, Raul's here. I'm just going to bring him in. All right, Raul, welcome. I'm just going to finish this up quick. So he got this thing started, and where it heads from here, we don't know. So everybody here, this is Raul Montero, catch LISK. You probably know him better that way. He's got his shirt on. So Raul, tell me what your first impression was when you saw that headline last night.
Well, I jumped immediately and started copying, pasting, because Newsday sucks. But, and letting everybody know right off the bat before I even have a chance to read it. But, for me, it really wasn't all that surprising. We kind of knew this was coming in some sort of iteration or matter of time. For me, it's been a long time coming, since July 14th, if you ask my personal opinion. Only because of, a lot of the things that I put in my tweet. So last night, I was just, one of the first things I did was I was kind of disappointed that it's happening this fast. The election hasn't happened yet. It could have been, because it is politics, and I know we'll get into it, but, he could have stayed on a little longer, and I'm glad that he's staying through December. But my first reaction was like, oh man, like, ratcheting it up, the tension again. So that was my first one. Then it was copying, pasting everything.
Right. Like here, even Ginger says here, y'all tell me it'll be okay, and we still get justice for all the victims. Yeah, we are so close as far as I am concerned that you can almost taste it, right? The success on where we were headed. And all of a sudden it's like a gut punch. And, you know, he was willing. He said, remember on the interview that I did with him, he said he was 1000% willing to change the manner of death on the Shannon Gilbert case, right? Go from accidental to homicide. He said 1000% if he can find that little bit of evidence to prove it otherwise. You know, and then all of a sudden now it's like, what does the next person do with this, right? How do they pick this up?
Yeah, I hate the fact that politics is involved in all of this, that, these victims and families have waited, some cases over 20 years for some sort of movement in this. And, Harrison did come in, with a world of promises, a world of openness and accessibility, and he lived up to it, and he gave us the 911 call. He lived up to that. Who knew about the Megan Waterman videos until those 5 were released? That was another big thing. So to a large degree, his transparency was more than welcomed. But I think if we want to just get the politics out of the way for this discussion, he's appointed by Bellone, and Bellone doesn't have the greatest reputation despite the consecutive terms he's been voted in. So, Bellone has made bad decisions with Burke, for one, hiring James Burke. He's made bad friend decisions with, Rob Strykoff and a whole million other entities. And to some degree, I'm sure Suffolk County is just glad that Bellone hit his term limit and he's gone. So, politics does make strange bedfellows. And while Harrison was the right man, or is the right man for the job, and has done so much, he's a little bit more beholden to Bellone than the district attorney is, because the DA does not answer to county executive. In fact, they're from opposing parties, and there's even a whole lot of issues with people that they mutually know or might be related to. So there's sort of politics in any county has a whole lot of inbreeding, and Suffolk County is just a hodgepodge of that. So that's where a lot of the politics come in. So with the arrest of Rex, I hate saying his name, with his arrest, the next morning you had the announcement from Tierney coming out first, followed by Harrison and Bellone. And Harrison, I felt like that was his, carrying the cross to the mountain, because he had to do that. I believe Bellone wasn't really in on the progress of the case to the point where there was an arrest imminent. Granted that they made that arrest without, or not as timely as they wanted to. They had to jump up the timeline for the arrest. So I don't believe Bellone was up in the know as much as anybody else close to that case was. So then then Tierney does his interview at the house, or his presser at the house, followed later on that day by the combined Tierney, Harrison, the families are there, that very long information filled press conference. I mean, I took pages and pages of notes. I couldn't write fast enough. Yeah. And then I think for me, that was indicative of enough of cracks in the facade. And in my opinion, it brought it home when the state troopers did their presser on, 4 days later, and really just extolling the virtues of, that investigator who, thank God, did her job and did it, flawlessly. So by then, the writing's on the wall, and, things had just become a matter of time, followed by, everybody out doing their own hour-long interviews, not only on social media, like your show or anybody else's, but like the Newsday events or the News 12 events, and, really just in-depth qualitative conversations. And what are we doing? Like, are we all measuring for, status? But, at the same time, we're waiting for charges for Maureen to come down. We're waiting for progress on Jessica and Valerie, and we're waiting for IDs on Asian Doe and Peaches and Toddler. So there's more to be done. We can't have this all fracturing now.
Right. And before we go on any further, I'd like to thank publicly Buzz for joining, and Hope 8 Fear. Thank you for gifting a membership. I appreciate that too. Yeah, so Raul, getting back to like the politics behind this kind of stuff, we know that Suffolk County has been rife with these politics, and I think maybe the county executive, and you kind of alluded to it before. He's leaving, and he wanted to get this out before he left, right? Get something under his belt to say, all right, yeah, listen, this all happened under my watch. And then all of a sudden, now look, we pulled the rabbit out of the hat. I finally found the right mixture, and I think that's kind of pushed that into the where we are, or back then actually in July. Kind of let's get this out there.
Yeah, I think it's entirely plausible as a political ploy. Bellone isn't the most careful what I say, but upstanding, politician in the world. He's a politician, and with a capital P. And he had aspirations for other offices, coming out of county executive. There was the whole, run for governor thing. So I think Bellone attempting to do that for me is a big, launch off a cliff and straight down, because there's nothing there for him. There's no real substance. There's more dirt out there, and innuendo out there that he'd have to overcome. So I don't know what his plans are going forward, but I could see him using that as a launch pad, but I don't know how much validity.
Yeah. I don't know how much he's going to get traction on that. I was just talking about maybe from a personal kind of view, where he just said, all this stuff happened under my watch, and now here we are at the end, but at least we kind of made good with it at that point.
Yeah,
but
egos are massive out there in Suffolk County.
Yeah. I mean, I like the tweet that you put out today about, exactly kind of what you said before, and about, let's just sum up that tweet, because I thought it was actually nice and short and to the point, but you know what? It kind of lays out the entire argument. And then afterwards, when I get to the show notes, I'm going to include that in there so that people who are looking for it, they can know exactly where to find it.
Yeah, I think for me with this entire case, it's a matter of separating all the innuendo and false rumors and false narratives. And it for me, everything is a bullet point. I mean, I can wax poetically, obviously, but when it comes to stuff like that, it just needs the facts and let people make their decisions. I don't care what people decide as far as, for or against anything. In this case, it's so much more important than, a basic write-up or some diametrical diatribe on whatever. So for that, I really just wanted to put out the bullet points. People are going to go that it's politics, and then right to where you didn't want to go, which are all the crazy conspiracy theories. And they are out there, and they're running rampant already, and just needed it to put it out. And for me, that this thing, where I went down the line of, the order of press conferences and I acknowledging what Harrison has done, I think you can look at Harrison as a great law enforcement officer, a great leader, a unifier, if you want to. You can look at him as somebody that is, focusing on what might have been easy with the evidence they had for, let's say, the GB4, or, while ignoring so many of the other issues or other cases, other people. But, at the end of the day, it's, for me, what breaks my heart, forget all the facts and all the bullet points. It's that the progress of this case has definitively taken a little bit of a pause, because it's just going to happen. Leadership's going to turn over. What's the direction? I think Tierney has enough momentum. I think the task force per se has enough momentum to continue going down the roads that they're investigating in the leads. There's still god darn a shit ton of evidence to go through, like everything out of the storage facilities. So charges could come out of all of that. And like you said, Joe, it doesn't necessarily need that figurehead at the top, but the next figurehead's got to do something really, really impactful to show their commitment to this case, solving this case, driving charges down the road further. Got to do honor to the families, and really got to bridge some sort of gap, because we can't go back to what Suffolk County has been for the last 100 years. Like, we have to continue to move forward, and I just worry about it.
Oh no, and Raul, I'm with you, man. And I said that in that little short I did last night. I'm very concerned about this. And yes, I don't want to start addressing all the crazy conspiracy theories out there. Anybody who has known me for the shorter period of time, I don't get involved in that kind of stuff. And it's just because I try to work on the facts, right? I mean, yeah, I say try, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. But we have to base this on the facts. And I look back at that interview, and I watched that interview again last night. I did with him, and I was looking then for other clues like body language and different things when I asked him kind of flat out, are you leaving, right? And what, are you worried about this? And he really didn't give any indication that this was going to happen right this second. But he did lay out the fact that there was a good possibility, a strong possibility, that he would no longer be the commissioner come the new year. So when people are talking about shock and awe and this and that, I'm like, you guys didn't watch the interview, because he told everybody basically that the gig was up. And it's unfortunate, but that's how this goes when you get a new executive in, right? Remember, he or she, whoever comes in, is going to want their own people behind it. This happens so often, and I think a lot of people don't understand that.
Yeah, and that also worries me a lot. Like, I'd have to assume, because I don't know, that the members of the task force are a tight-knit group, but a group that trusts each other now, because they look at what they've done. So any influx of new people in there, again, it's internal politics then. It's like, well, you're a newbie, or we have to have that inner transparency, that inner trust, everything that Harrison had talked about 2 years ago. But that has to stay the core value of this task force, because this is bigger than the next county executive or the next police commissioner. This is about people who lost their lives and bringing justice to their families.
Right. And we don't want to lose focus of that. For those of you that just joined us, we just jumped to 150 people watching this live. We're discussing the resignation of Suffolk County Police Commissioner Rodney Harris. With me live right now is Raul Montero from Catch LISK. You probably know him better as Catch LISK, but we're going to try to make Raul famous, because he has done great work in this case. I always tell people, if you're looking for information and data and maps and stuff like that, just go to his site, because you save yourself a bunch of time. Don't even bother trying to do it yourself. So we're discussing exactly what we think might transpire next. So for those of you that are just joining us, and thank you everybody again for contributing to this page. I appreciate that. G Hunt, and just recently Say No to Globalism. Thank you very much. And and Teresa, thank you very much for donating, and I appreciate it. We'll be putting it to good use. Don't worry about that. So here's a question from Janet. Do you think he's being pushed out early?
No, I don't think he's being pushed out early. Election day is next Tuesday.
Tuesday, yeah.
Oh, no, I don't think I don't even know if he's being pushed out. So before I even comment on him being pushed out, let's look at his play. What's his playbook? He leaves now out on top, doing all the things that he said he came in to do, and he succeeded. There's still more to be done, of course, with Maureen, but there's also all the other victims. So he goes out on top, and he can basically write his future if he wants to. So he can also, if we're being optimists, he could also be reappointed by the new county executive, and that would be a great photo op for everybody, because it's like, let's have continuity of the leadership, let's have the same drive going forward. So I mean, we can go pie in the sky on that, but I don't think I don't necessarily believe he's being pushed out. The one caveat to that would be, why go apparently rogue and do that, presser with John Ray? That concerned me a little bit. But again, I'm the guy sitting here making maps. I don't, I'm not.
And those maps are really important, though. But getting back to that statement you made about going rogue, right? I don't know if it was so much going rogue; it was just something different. I mean, this case has been mired, for lack of a better adjective, in a swamp, literally and figuratively. And we got to the point where I think that showed a little bit frustration on his part, maybe, about wanting to get this case moving faster, moving it forward at an exponential rate, not because he wanted to leave, but because I think he just felt that this case needed a kick in the butt, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I love the out of the box things. Like, the rules are, there are no rules. As long as you're not breaking the law, go for it, So I'm not opposed to it. On the surface, it made a lot of sense. People go to John Ray, people go here, people go there. That needs to get to the task force. It needs to be vetted. It needs to be investigated. And if he's bridging that gap on someone fundamentally connected to the case, like John Ray, whether you're for or against John Ray, regardless, John Ray does get this information and he puts it out there. So, bridging that gap and extending an olive branch, perhaps, there's nothing wrong with that. Tierney's almost instantaneously responding it felt like a slap on the wrist. Not that he has that, power over Harrison at all. But they're telling little examples of a fractured scenario.
Right. And like Brooklyn Paysola says, Harrison set the bar high. I'm afraid what comes next. And that's something here. So here, if one of the mods can put in Raul's catch list, they can put in his link tree there so that people can find these maps. And when I set this stream up, I didn't know who was going to be able to make it. I had reached out to Raul and he said, yep, he was going to do it. So I didn't get a chance to fix that, but I will update the show notes after the fact. So if somebody could do that for us. So here, Missy says, I wonder what John Ray is thinking about all this. Missy, we might have an answer to that soon. That's just a hint, but stay tuned. Stay tuned on that, everybody. I'm working on, I've been making a bunch of phone calls today, trying to find out what was going on. And then, we're trying to do this, but we have an excellent discussion going on here with Raul from Catch LISK. And we're still holding up at the 140 mark with the viewers here today. So we thank you guys for appreciating. We know you guys can be somewhere else or do something else, and to spend the time with me and Raul, I appreciate it very much. So what happens next? Let's talk about the future here. What do you think happens next? So before we get into that, who do you think wins the election next week? So we got Ed Romaine, and I don't even know who the other person is, because he hasn't really talked much about him out there.
Right. And I'm not even sure. There also hasn't been much of a conversation in any of their commentary regarding the continuity of this investigation and what their, directives or their own personal drives towards this are. So I think that if we're looking at just color, I think Suffolk County goes red. Just based on just the reality of it. So entirely possible. And if that's the case, I don't even know what happens if that's the case. Suffolk County is it's such an anomaly, regardless of it. Like Suffolk County statistics are predominantly Republican. So chances are, after all these years with Bellone at the helm, Suffolk County's going red. I don't know how that changes anything. I think that just becomes a matter of what their principles are and their directives and their priorities. But the completion of justice for these people needs to be at the top of the priority.
I hear you. And I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of red coming up in November. I think a lot of people are disillusioned for obvious reasons and other things that we're not going to get into, because I usually say there's three things I don't talk about: politics, religion, and OJ. Those are the three things I don't talk about. So here, Pete Pranzo brings up an excellent point. He says, I think John Ray lost his inside hook into the investigation. And unfortunately, I have to agree with Pete here.
Yeah, I don't know. John Ray has been such a polarizing individual in the case. He's, you know, in the beginning, he's done very dramatic things to really keep Shannon Gilbert out there, and Shannon and her family deserve it. They deserve that attention. Shannon's case needs to be really looked at, in my personal opinion, and I don't think Shannon's gotten justice. And to be just a little bit critical of Harrison, he really relatively swiftly, coming into that role 2 years ago, said that it's an unfortunate accident, you know, but he's now at the end of his tenure willing to reconsider if there is enough evidence. Well, I think there is enough questionable evidence to do that, but that is also a whole other conversation to have, and I don't want to monopolize the day with that, although it's worthy and deserved it. But
Oh, that's fine.
no, I mean, I think John Ray has brought in a lot of information that could be sourced or vetted, perhaps by the task force. If they haven't, I'm just making assumptions. I don't know what they do. But I also think that in a case like this, you're going to get the spectrum of people involved in it, you know, that are out there to advocate or to take advantage of. I don't know where people place John Ray, and it's not, I don't consider it my role to advise them where to put John Ray. Just put the facts out there and let people make their own decisions, as long as you are having discourse respectfully and ethically. That's all I care about. But can John Ray be the end all to this? It's entirely possible. If he gets any of those 4 witness statements, 2 that signed affidavits, have any real validity, and anything comes from that, then that could be a game changer.
Yeah, well, actually, I had John Ray on a follow-up interview, and he said that he has now taken more affidavits. You know, after I had asked him to explain to the audience what an affidavit is and what it does, and he just pretty much explained it. It's a piece of paper, but it has some legal implications about, you know, perjury, so to speak, and some other issues. So it is just something that, you know, he's been working diligently. Like I said, no matter what people want to say about John Ray, he kept this case in the spotlight. I mean, when everyone else had kind of forgotten about it. I mean, nobody was talking about this case. Maybe on an anniversary date, they might mention, oh, it's 10 years and no suspects. Yeah, 10 years. I mean, I think it was a Newsday. 10 years, 10 bodies, 0 suspects. Right? I think I remember that in the front page of the Newsday.
Yeah, that was the Bob Kolker article at the 10-year anniversary. But that's the 10-year anniversary of like Shannon and the discovery of the bodies. Like there's Jess and Val from the year 2000. You know, there's potentially people even a decade before that, 2 decades before that. So, you know, the scope is vast. I think everyone should remember the case isn't just 10 years old. The case goes back much further than that. Even if you're just looking at the bodies that were recovered on Ocean Parkway, Valerie in the year 2000. So, you know, Peaches in 97, Karen Vergata, 96. So if they can tie Rex to Karen substantially, unequivocally, you know, then really everything changes, and the scope of this investigation explodes by 1 billion. And there aren't enough resources in Suffolk County alone to do that. So, you know, I'd love to see it. I think 20-something years, 25 years is long enough.
Yep, I hear you. So Shannon of the Shaming of Jay, my friends over there, she just posted your link tree. So everybody just copy that down. It'll be in the chat, and like I said, and I will add it to the show notes for sure. And if I don't, Raul has the permission to kick me in the butt to make sure it gets done. Because unfortunately, I have a million things going on. And I'm trying to juggle all these things, and I'm trying to do this, and I'm learning all this stuff. And Jay makes me these old man videos these how-to things. So it's actually a big help. So, the issue that we're really talking about here is that the police commissioner of Suffolk County, Rodney Harrison, if you're just joining us, we probably know since last night, he has put in his resignation papers, and he'll be leaving the Suffolk County Police Department either sometime in December or at the end of December. We don't know the exact date just yet. And we're just trying to put together the pieces about what happens next. And that's really all we're doing here. We don't want to get into the speculation range on who's to blame and who's this and who's that. And, is it politics as usual? Well, listen, it's Suffolk County, so it's always politics as usual, that kind of thing. And to bring in an analogy, for those of you that have never seen the movie The Godfather, there's a scene where the Don tells Michael, said, listen, if you really want to know who's going to come after you, they're going to come to you friendly. They're going to say to you, I'm going to protect you. I'm going to do this, right? And then you have the scene at the cemetery where Tessio, the Abe Vigoda character, comes in and says, yeah, Mike, we want to talk. I think, this person or persons will probably reveal themselves about what's going on in Suffolk County in the next couple of weeks. I really do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love fish. So, but I think if we're looking at what's next, I think from a scientific standpoint, it's a lot of the DNA testing. So, FGG is out again, New York State can move forward with that. So now they're going to be canvassing, Rex's DNA through the database. And I think that's super critical. And I watch NamUs literally every day, and there's a lot of New York modifications happening in the last week or two. So that's big news. I think once there's enough overwhelming convictable evidence for charges for Maureen's murder, then I think that's going to happen. And like you said earlier in the show, that could happen literally in the next handful of days. I kind of was thinking that might happen today, but next week is fine. And then what else is there? So there's DNA, related to victims that haven't been out there that long either. Jessica Taylor, Valerie Mack. There's Peaches' DNA, which we know, but there's a lot more methodology that could be culled from all things Peaches. I think something about the Asian twink in that bail doc leads me to think that they're developing something, related to Asian male, Asian doe. So, what's next is all DNA. It's all DNA. Othram's on it. They're involved in it. So, there's a lot of progress that can happen, but everybody should know that progress can take anywhere from weeks to many, 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 many months, meaning a year plus. So, I think what's next is a lot of patience, a lot of tolerance, a lot of pushing the envelope still, because I'm not going to take a back seat, and I don't think anybody else should. But we got to continue looking at, evidence like that. And any of these witnesses that come through, as long as they're vetted, I mean, you could sign an affidavit, fine. If you can make up a story that's unprovable, then it's a nothing burger. But if there's substance to it and it can be investigated, then let's see what's up. I think that whole RW angle is very, very interesting, and I'm really curious to hear about that. I'm also curious to know what the hell was in those storage units.
And why you need to call the medical examiner, right? That's the thing here. So for those of you that's just joining us, I have Raul from Catch List joining me about discussing the resignation of the police commissioner from Suffolk County, Rodney Harrison. And if you caught what Raul just said, New York State has moved forward now with the familial testing, and there was another article about that today in the Newsday. If you don't live in on Long Island and you don't have access to the Newsday website, just because it's a subscription, there's an article there. I will see if I can gift it, and I'll post that gift link if I can do it. If not, I'll try to find another link, and when I update it with Raul's information, I will put that article in there so everybody can understand exactly what is now coming down in New York State. It's big news that the familial DNA is back. It was being used. Then there was a lawsuit from two brothers who got caught up in some mess. We're not going to get into that, but they filed a lawsuit. They had suspended it for a while, but now the judge up in New York State said no. I think they're finally realizing that this is a great tool. So what Poke Mom asked about what DNA labs they're using, we know Othram is definitely one of them. I don't know of any others, but they had mentioned Othram is involved in this. I mean, the other big one is Parabon. I don't know if they're in on this too, but I wouldn't be a bit surprised if they were. And yeah, unfortunately, a lot of people are looking at this and saying like, why has New York fought this? Remember, New York fought the Las Vegas Police Department to give them the DNA of Rex Heuermann as a suspect to match against this the database, against the evidence that they had in their cases. That's how crazy New York has gotten over the last couple of decades, right? For a lack of a better adjective, the nuts are running the asylum, and it's the greatest tool ever. And I understand that they're worried about misuse, and so am I, right? Because we don't want to see them break a new toy, so to speak. The police department's famous for that, right? I mean, you get a new toy and you use it, and then you break it, and then they tell you, we're not doing that. Fuzzy Puff, thank you so much for your donation. I really appreciate that. Like I said, we're going to put all this stuff to good use and be able to do that. But yeah, I mean, it's hey, Raul, they love your hoodie. I guess they're gonna. Is that available for purchase if people want that?
No, when I made the logo, they sent it to me for free, and with my hat, I could never sell anything like that. It's just not me.
Okay, Jersey Gene, thanks for joining us. You make sure you're following Catch LISK too. He's on Twitter. He's all over the place. He's doing his thing. And we're just trying to, Teresa, New York does not play nice with others. Say no to globalization. Thank you very much. Joe, off topic, but you're related to New York President Diane Jackalone, the Gotti prosecutor. No, I'm not. My phone has been ringing off the wall since that new show has hit. I'm not related to Diane Jackalone, and I'm not related to the other Joe Jackalone, who was the last person seen with Jimmy Hoffa. There's an article that has me because what happens, the Detroit mob is run by the Jackalone family. And Anthony Jackalone was ahead of it for a long time. His son, Joseph Jackalone, was the last person seen with Jimmy Hoffa. So when that whole Netflix thing came out with, was it Martin Scorsese, the 3 hour, The Irishman thing? I got all kinds of, my face is with Anthony Jackalone saying, this is the guy that killed Jimmy Hoffa, right? And I've been trying to get them to take it down for years and they just won't. But but no, that's not me. So I just gave up on that, but it is what it is. So Roger, thank you much for the donation. Thank you. Keep up the great work. We certainly will. And when I have friends like Raul to help me out, boy, it's really happening in that respect. So like the old saying, I'm waiting for the next, shoe to drop, so to speak. And I just hope that it's not the victims, right? Basically, that's what we're dealing with here. And we got to keep that victim focus. I know the platform that I'm building now, it's still very small, but it is great. It's gaining pretty quickly. I'm going to use this platform to make sure that we don't forget about the victims. I want to stay victim-centric. I have from the beginning. I don't want to get into the weeds with a lot of this stuff. We have to remember that this is, real people. These are real families out there that have to deal with this. And sometimes that gets lost in the whole true crime shuffle.
Yeah, I can never let that get lost. I mean, even after, posting what I did on Harrison, like I sat back and I reflected for a few minutes because I tried to make an effort at that. And, the one, there's many missing, but it reminded me that we're close to getting justice for Maureen. So Maureen was on my mind this morning. And, when her sister shared with me, with the world, Maureen's poem, Make a New Reality, I just reflect on that. I reflect on that quite frequently because I just think it's so insightful. And just the way Maureen's brain had been working, her awareness, her honesty. And for me, it was just so, it's always so poignant to reflect on and reread it again. So I reposted it again. And, it's these young women and Asian doe and toddler, like they had their entire lives ahead of them. And these are just the victims that we know or we consider possibles. There's, like, I feel like Judith Ramona Villas, and there's lives that have been dramatically impacted by that. And we can't ever forget these victims. We can't allow it. Even when justice is served, we have to memorialize and honor them. We have to allow the families to move forward, as best that they can. But to quietly memorialize them and pay them an untold respect. And honestly, we might not have been here if it wasn't for Shannon Gilbert too. So, she has to always be part of the equation of honoring and respecting these people and their families who advocated for them for years before there were anybody like me doing it, supporting it, So, yeah, I tried to work through that emotion welling up and just.
You're doing pretty good. We got to get you a piece of gum to chew on, right? Galen, I want to thank you very much for your generous donation. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Like I said, we're going to do some good stuff with this moving forward, and we're going to try to put on the best shows that we can and get the best guests. I have a lot of. Here's a smile for the camera, my dimples. Okay, there you go, Essie. So we're trying to. I have a lot of shows lined up. I have this week just to take a quick break here for Raul. This Tuesday, I have former Chief of Department Louis Anamone from the New York City Police Department. He was the head of the police department in the 1980s and 90s. And if you're into New York City history and beyond that, you got to watch this. This guy is the real deal. And he's probably the last chief of department that had some chutzpah that, because he was kind of, he quit on his own in right before 2000, or a dispute with the mayor and everything else going on. But he was the guy that really put in Bill Bratton's plan and made sure he executed it. So that's on Tuesday. And then on following Sunday, I have Gil Carrillo, one of the arresting officers of the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez. You don't want to miss that either. And I'm trying to put together a show Sunday now because Gil had a conflict and he had to change. So chutzpah, that's my word of the day, Dizzy. I'm trying to keep this PG-13. So we're gonna keep it at that. But it's I think the next couple of weeks is going to really tell the tale, and I think there's a little bit of I don't want to say panic, but I think concern going on in the county executive's office going into this new year, especially with the elections and everything else on the line for the Democrats and the Republicans. Like I said, I don't get involved in this stuff, but I do think that there's a lot of concern.
Yeah, it's a shame that politics gets in the middle of it. It's so detrimental, and not to rehash that whole conversation again, but like I always say, we have to do better as a society. Like we have to put people first, not dollars or constituents or clicks or whatever. Like it's important to keep that first. And I'm still looking forward to your Tuesday show, by the way, because I've been spending almost 2 years trying to write up a big thing on the 80s and 90s, and that's a critical show. So I have a whole new empty notepad to write in.
It's really going to be a living history stuff for those that are really into the New York City crime in the 80s and 90s, when people say, hey, things aren't as bad as the 80s and 90s. We're going to find out exactly how bad they were, right from the man himself who was running the police department from its darkest days into the good days.
Yeah, and honestly, the 80s and 90s are the generator of people like Rex Uriman.
Right.
That's their training ground.
Right. And when I had you on the show a couple of weeks ago, that was the day I had the commissioner on. It was about 2 weeks ago now on a Tuesday. And we went through a couple of other cases about this. And I think, is it Ms. Ramos? Is that the 1993? Was that the case?
Judith
Falaz. In 1993, right? That could be like one of the earliest case that could be attributed to, to Rex, right? It kind of falls within that same framework and same MO kind of thing. And we're going to have to wait to see what happens. But all of this kind of stuff gets put on hold now, right? I mean, how much further do they want to go back? Are we just now going to get next week Maureen Brainerd Barnes added to the docket for Rex Uriman, and then we'll kind of like put everything else on the shelf again? That's what I worry about.
I worry about it too. And I don't think I don't know how they can. And if they do, then it's a conscious decision that is reprehensible. Because, like I said earlier, it was a matter of 3 days, from Jessica Taylor's disappearance to her discovery. There has to be something there. There has to be something there in the blanket that Peaches' torso was wrapped in. That there has to be something there.
Yeah.
And if technology is advancing at this rate, then you can take a degraded hair sample, even if it's minus its follicle, and you can get a profile. And if that's what we're doing, then the state needs to get its act together and support stuff like this, because cold cases need to be solved, and they don't have to be a massive nation or worldwide case like the Long Island serial killer. It can be just a murder upstate New York somewhere where someone lost their life and evidence is sitting in a file somewhere languishing.
And this this doesn't have to do with just homicides too. It has to do with missing persons and sexual assault. And I've said this before, and I've done a million interviews on TV, and I've said this too. I don't believe in coincidences. I don't believe that the judge up in Albany decided to say, "Hey, you know what? We better get on board with this, familial DNA stuff." Well, they're solving major cases all across the country. New York has been lagging seriously behind us, and now they have somebody on the radar that could be responsible. And I say could be, right? We don't know for sure. Could be responsible for more than 3, maybe a lot more. And like you said, the Peaches case is the most intriguing because it was in a container, and the chances of having DNA, I think, is pretty high. Even though it was very hot when it was found. I think it was in July. It was found in Hempstead Lake State Park. So yeah, things get degraded in the heat and the moisture, and everything else goes on there. But like I said, we have leaps and bounds ahead of this, and I just I'm glad to see people are starting to wake up. It's just starting to wake up.
Yeah, I mean, New York needed to get its act together. I mean, I couldn't keep up with the announcements of, this unidentified Jane Doe got a name back, or this, unidentified child Doe got their name back. And I couldn't keep up with it. And meanwhile, in my own backyard, it's like, what the F is New York doing? Like, we got to wake up and not be the laughingstock. If we're such a progressive state, then solve some crimes. Like, you're not invading someone's privacy, if you ask me. That's my personal opinion. But if you have rules in place, restrictions or permissions that have to be, or thresholds that have to be achieved in order to gain this access, then do what you need to do, but solve these cases. How many old cases are languishing without anybody doing anything about it, when it could be something as simple as what happened with identifying Rex?
Right. You just used the DNA. S.E. Gittins, thank you. Thank you very much for your donation. Like I said, we're gonna do something really good with this. I haven't figured out exactly what just yet, but we're working on it. Let's put it this way. The wheels are in motion, right? Sometimes the wheels of justice are slow and they're arduous, but at least there is some hope, right? Hope is not a plan for law enforcement. I always say that. But when it comes to these other things, specifically the family, hope is all they have.
That's the thing. And translating that to families or vice versa doesn't always marry up. So hope is not a strategy, but it is, like you said, all that people have. And, at some point, I mean, that gets into a whole other conversation of, ethical dialogue between law enforcement and family members or advocates. And there's a world to do there too. But, I'm still optimistic. I think the task force has such momentum now. Tierney's not going anywhere anytime soon, at least that I'm hearing. So
he's elected, so he's got to finish out his term unless he quits, right?
Yeah, let's continue to support that and push the buttons where we need to, and continue to pray for justice for all of them.
Yeah, I think Tierney has a chance to even be governor one day if he keeps down this route. I mean, remember, he's taken a big chance doing this Rex Sherman case himself. He is going to be the prosecutor on that case. He hasn't given it to an assistant district attorney. It's all him, and his career will ride the rest of the way. If he's successful, I think he's going big time places. If he's not successful, he's going to be Monday morning quarterback until the day is over.
I'd hate to think that he's not successful. To have this bottom out and go sideways would be, oh my God, I don't even think I've thought of that. Like, it would be wholly devastating on every level imaginable.
Well, I don't think that this will, but
Right.
remember, when you're dealing with 12 people in a jury, anything can happen, right? Anything can happen. So remember, we still haven't gotten the data dumps from the search warrants, the search warrant returns, from not only from the house, but like you mentioned before, the storage facility. There's still so many things that we don't know that really is going to be dramatic when it comes out. And I have the sneaky suspicion that we're going to see some action before the end of this year.
I agree, and I look forward to it. Like, I'm ready to go, So let's put it out there, and let's do what we need to do for just give recognition and justice, because it's gone on too long, way too long.
Very good, Raul. I want to thank you once again for joining me and giving everybody and sharing your insight and all your information. Catch LISK is his moniker out there. We're going to be putting it into the show notes. It's actually in the comments section too. For all those that donated today and spent your time with me, I appreciate that. And everybody who has liked, shared, I appreciate it all. I really do. And like I said, we're building something really good here with the help of my friends. The Shaming of Jay, Publicly Buzzed, Defense Diaries, and Stevie Irwin. He did out my new banner around the whole thing. I think it looks awesome. So everybody has really pitched in to get this thing off the ground. So I got it in the air, right? We got it off the tarmac. We're in the air. Now we're going to keep it in the air and see how far we can take this. All right, everybody, I want you to enjoy yourselves this weekend. Be safe. And hopefully I can have an announcement for this Sunday. So try to keep something open if you're not going to watch football. I'm trying to put together a show to replace moving Gil to next week. So everybody, I want to thank you again. You guys have a great weekend. Take care.